Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're coming to the end of 2024, but my goal for you this fourth quarter was to set you up for success that's really going to make a difference in 2024. Because whatever we do now, it sets us up to have 12 months of that action that we take. So today's my guest is going to help us in that area. I've got with us Tom, and Tom's going to share with us what problem will you help our listeners solve today?
I'm going to help them solve the biggest problem they have, the biggest problem every business has, and that's obscurity. I argue that right now, whatever product, whatever service you have, there are thousands or tens of thousands of people that are just dreaming of it, right? They'd gladly give you money for it. There's only one problem. They don't know you exist, right? We don't buy the best. We buy the best we know of. And so that's why I argue obscurity is your biggest problem, and that's what we're going to fix today.
Well, Tom, we always talk about the 6P business owner formula, and we're going to talk about that area of promotion today, which is all about marketing yourself and your business. So Tom Schwab is with us today. Have you ever thought about obscurity, the biggest problem that you have? There are thousands of ideal clients, customers that don't you exist. We don't buy the best. We buy what we know of, as Tom showed with us. So today, our guest, he's going to have a refreshingly new view on this. He's the author of the podcast Guest Profits. He asks you to consider that you are just one conversation away. That's his experience working with 1,000 leading brands as the chief evangelist officer at Interview Valet. Maybe it's time to stop trying to break through the noise and get in on the conversation your ideal customers are already listening to. Tom, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Gary, I am thrilled to be here, and especially this time to get things started for the new year.
That's right. That's why I really wanted to find guests that would make a difference for people for the next 12 months, because whatever they take action on in this fourth quarter, they're going to get a return on investment that's a lot longer. And we're going to really talk about that. And you talked a little bit about in your opening there and the problem you'll help solve. So let's just go dive straight into it and stuff. Why do you think obscurity is the biggest problem that small businesses face?
Well, today there's this thing of everybody's telling you to break through the noise, right? Did you ever notice the people that are telling us to break through the noise are the ones that are selling us the megaphones, right? They're the ones that want us to yell louder and louder, and nobody's getting heard, right? And I believe that today we are blessed with customers like businesses have never seen before, right? 20 years ago, it would have been just if somebody lived in our local region, our local area. Now with the internet, we've got customers around the nation, around the world, right? There's a lot of problems in the world today, but there's no better time to be alive. The problem is that everybody else is competing for those same customers. So if we all try yelling, nobody's going to get heard. And really, does your ideal customer want to be yelled at? No, I find that it's much easier to get in on the conversation they're already listening to. And this is nothing new, right? It's what our grandparents did when they would go talk at the Chamber of Commerce or be in the local Rotary Club, right? They would tapping into existing audiences. It's what people did 30 years ago when it was as seen on television. And that's what we're doing today is tapping into existing audiences, getting that know, like, and trust. And, today, the easiest way to do that is not trying to get on television. It's trying to get on podcasts, to tell your story, to bring value to the audience.
Yeah. And I think when you bring that value, of course, they already know you then, or they feel like they know you. Cause like on this podcast, it's not going to just be audio. They're also going to be, we're going to put it over on YouTube so people can see it how they want. So they get to know you. But when they like you, of course, we know that really brings the benefits of the trust factor of that they're willing to do business with you or check you out in that area. So let's talk a little bit about that is, we've talked before and, I've heard this many times that this year people are worried because it's an election year going into 2024. And they're thinking small businesses, it's going to be hard for them to really do their marketing to get the message out that they want. Why do you see small business owners as the losers in the 2024 election?
I will make this prediction here, right? I can't tell you who's going to win the election, but I can tell you who's going to lose it, right? It's that person that thinks, oh, I can outspend the political campaigns and buy Facebook traffic, or I can out yell them, right? They've got unlimited budgets. We, as business owners, we can't print money. They can. And we're already seeing this now as, even though they might not be going for the same audience, the same keywords, they're driving up the cost of paid ads, of social ads. They're also drowning out the clients, right? At a certain point, people just stop listening to everything. The other thing that's interesting, well, I guess interesting is one word, is there's new regulations coming out next year, right? That limit texting, that limit emails, right? There's a new regulation going in with Google and Yahoo that says if you're a bulk emailer and you get more than 3 spam indications out of 1,000, they're going to shut you down, right?
Wow.
So there's these new regulations. Gary, guess who the only people are that the regulations don't apply to?
The ones that's setting the regulation.
The politicians, because they said this is freedom to speech. So as a business owner, they're taking away our ability to talk with the clients because they don't want us competing with them. So I look at it and say, with David and Goliath, I'm not going head to head with Coke and trying to figure out who can spend the most on a Super Bowl, right? Let them have that medium. Let them have that channel. Often people will say, well, that's not scalable. No, but that's the reason small business can use it, because it may not be scalable, but it's effective. And we have to figure out the smart things to do. And I think especially in 2024, because with AI, with marketing changes, with this competition, if you think things are tough today, wait till October or November. The prices for marketing are going to be through the roof.
Yeah, I know what you mean there. I heard the other day on that piece that I was listening to, a political campaign for a Senate campaign was going to run in the $300 million. And just think what that is when you talk about driving up the pricing for advertising, whatever you're on. Doesn't matter if it's social media, if it's TV, if it's whatever it is, radio, it's going to drive up those prices. So the question we have to ask ourselves as business owners as we go into 2024 to be more strategic, what are some of those things we need to do to be more strategic? And of course, I think you're talking about what they call podcast interview marketing. Maybe you should explain that and really talk about it, because I don't want to assume anything, because when we do that, we get in trouble. Is that the same thing as what I would term podcast guesting?
Often people will use it the same way, right? Podcast guesting, podcast interview marketing, same thing, right? Well, I would say is fishing with your child the same thing as commercial fishing? No, there's similarities, but one is to drive economic value, other one's just a hobby, right? So I see a lot of people going out and they'll do a few untargeted podcast interviews, or they'll do a couple social media posts and they'll say, I'm doing social media marketing. or I'm doing podcast interview marketing. It's like, no, the activity is not the strategy. So podcast guesting is a strategy. Podcast interview marketing is a proven marketing channel. And really what it is identifying who the ideal audience is that aligns with your ideal client profile, right? Or your super consumer, identifying them, identifying the podcast they listen to, and then having a system to reproducibly go out, reach out to the podcast host, get invited, talk about problems and solutions that are interesting to your ideal customers, and then taking that content to repurpose it, to promote it. You know, you can get a month's worth of content out of every podcast interview. And I pull my hair out. I was talking to a prospect this summer, and they said, I want to be on 100 podcast interviews in June. Like, why? Oh, because it'll give me massive exposure. All I could think of is go commit a heinous crime. You'll get massive exposure. People will know you. They'll know your middle name, right? It's not going to help your business, right? The goal is not massive exposure. It's exposure to the right people. So I always encourage them, you know, do fewer interviews, but do better interviews, right? Do more with the content, right? Because there's this, if you want to call it hustle culture out there of grind, 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 do more, do more. And often I see it in my mind, the visual of someone being in a rowboat with one oar, and they're just doing more, more, and more. They're going faster and faster, but all they're doing is spinning around in a circle. So to me, that's podcast guesting. Podcast interview marketing is when you take the fewest amount of strokes, go in the direction you want, and really get to your ultimate goal.
Well, I love what you say about finding that ideal client. And so you're targeting the right clientele versus, you know, so many people, you know, the old splatterboard method. We just throw things up on the wall and see what sticks. You know, in our marketing, how can we be more concise and how can we get our message out there? And I think people think about a lot of times they don't realize how many podcasts there are, but how many people they're targeted for certain markets. You know, I renamed my podcast a couple of years ago. This is Small Business Answer Man, because who do I want on my podcast? I want business owners and entrepreneurs. And then I want to get guests that will help those people achieve what they want. And I think what has really happened is I saw my numbers at first go down a little bit. But what I found out, we're actually getting more listenership because of we're really targeted in on our market. And we normally talk about something in those 6P areas, just like we're talking about today, of promotion. So in that area of promotion, and we're looking at that marketing side, what are some of the things that you would share with the listeners? You've shared multiple things already that they need to really consider going into 2024 to really ramp up the marketing efforts.
Yeah. One of the things you touched in there is getting the feedback, right? Make sure whatever you're doing, you're measuring it, right? Because how do you know if it's a base hit or a home run? So as you're testing different things, make sure you've got a feedback model, right? We've got a system here that we always teach, and you know, I have it in my book. At a podcast interview, you always send people back to a dedicated welcome page. Right? You put 3 things on there that are valuable to them. And guess what? That's how you attribute the traffic. And it's so important because let me tell you of a story. You may have heard this story before because the gentleman was in an organization we both were in. And he came to me, and he is a high-level tax consultant, CPA. He has got more personality than any CPA you have ever met. He's a retired New York City detective. And he came to me and he said, Tom, I want 50 different clients in 50 different states in 50 different industries. And I'm like, why? And he said, because the last recession, I was all brick and mortar on Long Island and I almost got wiped out. So Gary, this is easy. It's like throwing darts at a dartboard. Well, we're about 3 or 4 months in, and we look at the data, and he had been on a dental podcast, and it was like fish in a barrel, right? And so we took the data to him on one of the monthly optimization calls and said, you did amazing on this dental podcast. And he's like, I've already signed up 2 clients from that, and I believe that I've got a handful more scheduled to talk. He's like, I love dentists, right? They're recession proof, good cash flow, they're professionals. For the next 6 months, all we did was dental podcasts, right? And the majority of his business now is dentists. And so it's that idea of doing these marketing experiments, listening to what the clients tell you, right? I always say, I've got an opinion, you've got an opinion, consultants have an opinion, but it's the customers that have the answers because they're voting with their time, they're voting with their money. And often we just have to be smart enough to know right answer when told. So doing that with podcast interviews can be great market research to figure out not only who you think your ideal customer is, but what they think they are.
Yeah, some great feedback there, really targeting in, but finding out who that target is. What is your true niche? What is your area of expertise that you're sharing? And then find that and then really discover that and really put those resources, but have ways that you find out. And there's ways that you can do that, as you talked about, is if you're on something, to be able to know if they're coming back to you. I always interested when I talk to business owners and they've said they've had a really great year and everything's worked great. And I said, okay, what are you going to do next year? And they say, well, I don't know, the same thing. Well, that creates a real tough strategy in the business of marketing because you don't know what really allowed you to create that success. And until you know, then you're not going to be able to recreate that because there's going to be some opportunities not available to you in the past. And that's where I think I love what you said, like with podcasting, you can specifically take them to a page. So let's give them an example in this and let's just put it in action because you have a call to action from this podcast if they wanted to learn more. So would you share with them how they could get that and how you could set up and go ahead and set it up of how you would share that with listeners?
So here's pulling behind the curtain, right? If for no other reason you want to see how to set up your welcome page, this is how to do it. You say, give them their website, interviewvalet.com/answerman, right? On there, you'll find that everything that Gary and I talked about, right? There'll be 3 calls to action, right? That always works best off of podcast interviews. Digital marketers will tell you 1 call to action. I don't disagree with them, but on a podcast, give them 3 ways to say yes: a small yes, a medium yes, and a heck yes. So the small yes is something that doesn't take them a lot of time or money. On interviewvalet.com/answerman, I'll put an assessment, right? 10 questions. Will podcast interview marketing work for you? Now, the medium yes, something that's going to take them a little bit more time or money. For me, I always give away a copy of my book, right? If you're in the States, I'll mail you a copy. If you're overseas, I'll email you a copy, right? So if you want a copy of Podcast Guest Profits, that's there. Then for the heck yes, if somebody's listening to you and they're like, Gary is answer to prayer, right? Don't slow them down in a funnel. Whales don't click and big fish don't swim through funnels. Let them contact you or take that big step. So for me, that's just a discovery call, right? If you want to talk about this, let's jump on a call. So you tell them where to go, tell them what they'll find there, and then remind them again where to go. It's very systematic. It works. It attributes the traffic, and it's not rocket science, right? It's a proven system that we've been doing for over 9 years, and it works.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I thought, why not just use a practical example versus talking about it, using that practical example. And we're going to have that in show notes. So it's interviewvalet.com /answer man, but you can click right on that as you go there. And if you want to see the example, just go there to check out the example that Tom has built for us. But he's also asking you, if you're interested, you can get the free assessment. You can get a copy of the book if you want to read it and really dive in. How could this make a difference for you? Or you can do a discovery call that's available to him. So I appreciate you sharing that with my listeners, Tom.
Well, it's like we have learned it from the last 9 years working with 1,000 clients, always testing it, improving it. And I always say, I want everybody to get better results with this. So I share it openly.
Yeah. And I think the thing I want to tell people, if they think, well, podcast marketing, I don't know if it works. Number one, I would tell you, think about your business. And let's say you're just a local business. There's local podcasts in your area that could be targeted to be able to let them know about you. So there's opportunity anywhere. And the other thing I want you to just think about is, how am I doing my marketing? Because I love the one thing you talked about, Tom, is how do we make it simple for them to say yes? A small yes, a medium size, a heck yes. I'm on that side. And are you allowing that? Because so many people have websites and all there is information. Get them to say yes to you in your business and have them be able to reach out to you. And you can do that in so many multiple ways. So to me, this is talking about promotion. How do you promote your business going into 2024? So Tom, anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I just like to push out one thing here. You had mentioned it works for everyone, right? I think it works better the more of a relationship sale it is, right? If it's just a transaction, I probably don't need to know, like, and trust the company, right? I always talk about earbuds. I still use the wired ones because they go through the wash once a week, right? I don't care about that. To me, it's a disposable. But if it's a service, if it's a higher level thing that's going to impact my life, I want to know the person's heart, right? So many of those things aren't sold, they're bought, right? People are looking to buy. Just make it easy for them to buy. And I think if we focus on that, what's it? Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, jab, 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 right hook. I look at it as give, ask, right? You keep giving value. They're going to ask, how can I work with you?
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because that is so true for each of us to realize in our marketing. Tom, before I let you go, I want to ask you one question. I ask every guest this question, is what would be your best advice you would give to business owners and entrepreneurs?
You're one conversation away, not one funnel away. I think it's a great marketing tactic, right? Everything's a funnel, but funnels are dehumanizing. Right? People have gotten so used to them. We know when we're in a funnel. We know when AI is starting to talk with us. I think people are tired of that. They want that human connection. You can't compete with Fortune 500 companies with their AI and their automation. So do something they can't. Be a human. Have that one-on-one conversation, and you'll serve yourself and you'll serve the clients much better.
Well, some great information, Tom. I can't appreciate you enough for saying yes to coming on the podcast and giving us really this promotion area that we can really make a difference in 2024. Don't forget the call to action, interviewvalet.com/answer man. We'll have that in show notes, so it's easier. Of course, the website is interviewvalet.com. Tom's on all kinds of social media, so you can find their company on Facebook, on Twitter. Looks like you have YouTube, LinkedIn. So wherever you want to find him, he is available, and we'll have all that in show notes for them be able to reach out to you and connect with you. Tom, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate everything you do.
Now, listeners, here's my call to action. I always give you a call to action. It's the end of 2024. What are you going to do in 2024 to set your company up to promote yourself and your company? We talked about some of the challenges you're going to have. The airwaves are going to be heavy with the political storm of advertising and marketing. So how are you going to distinguish yourself into the marketplace? I want you to think about that question. Then you decide what the answer is to be able to promote your business and market it so you can have this success you're looking for in 2024. Remember, if you like this podcast, like it and share it and let others know about it. That's how we keep growing our audience. Thanks for joining us today. Make it a great day. We'll see you soon.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.